Welcome to This Week in Business. I'm Mike Nikitas. It seems more likely that daily online fantasy sports games are going to face the reality of regulation in Massachusetts. This coming week, the Massachusetts Gaming Commission will consider whether daily fantasy sports games are legal and whether they should be regulated, and if so, by who and how. Now, before we continue, we note that Comcast, which owns NBC Universal and NECN, is an investor in FanDuel, one of the most popular daily websites. Now, here on This Week in Business for a closer look, NECN legal analyst Michael Coyne, Dean of the Massachusetts School of Law. And Michael, so good to see you.
Nice to see you, Mike.
Also important to note before we go on, the Gaming Commission is not going to be making policy. They are going to look into these questions in an advisory role for the governor, the legislature, the attorney general, the courts. They say they want to get into it. It's interesting that another layer of Massachusetts government wants to get into this question, but they see it as their purview. So first off, any doubt whatsoever that these sites are going to be regulated?
There's no doubt in my mind that they will, in fact, be regulated. Likely, we are going to see regulation at the federal level as well as at the state level. Massachusetts, both our Attorney General is looking at it, as is the Gaming Commission, as is the legislature. The likelihood is there's so much money involved at this point that we are likely to see both regulation and taxation. They usually go hand in hand.
Yeah, and they're two separate questions and good ones. So if you were on the Gaming Commission looking into this, and as a lawyer, how would you approach these questions? First off, is it, as it now stands under Massachusetts law, what these guys do legal?
Well, you'd first look at the exemption that Congress granted them in 2006. And what you'd see there is, in all likelihood, what they had envisioned is 6 to 8 guys hanging around a table, throwing in some money into the pot and engaging in some fantasy of owning a football team.
It's a little bigger than that now.
It's a lot bigger than that, and it's because of the disruptive innovation with respect to all the statistics available, the ease of gambling on the internet. What we've seen is an explosion in growth in this area that no one, or at least none of the legislatures, none of the legislative bodies really expected. And so now when we're starting to talk about billions of dollars and the biggest investors in the country, including the parent here, investing in it, people have to start to take a much harder look and to make sure that at least on the consumer level that the players are in fact getting what they're being promised.
All right, so from your perspective, what they're doing right now, is it legal under Massachusetts law? Are they breaking the law by what they're doing, or is it what they're doing within the law?
The likelihood is, in my opinion right now, is that it is consistent with the Mass law and not illegal, because the federal exemption would at least allow it to take place. Massachusetts would have to have a specific law that would prohibit it. They do not appear to. The Attorney General has said that she has not weighed in on either side of this issue as to whether it's legal or illegal at this point. My belief is that if she determined already that it was illegal, we would have put a stop to it.
They would have shut it down, and which is what Nevada has been trying to do, which is, so many people find kind of counterintuitive and a bit rich in that in Las Vegas and in Nevada, where gambling is legal, these things are being prohibited from operating.
Well, but remember, from a business standpoint, and that's what we're discussing, it's in Las Vegas's interest to determine that that they don't get a piece of, is in fact illegal gambling. Come before us, seek a license, ask us to regulate it and to get a piece of it, and then we'll make it legal. I think Las Vegas is actually acting in their own self-interest to protect the casinos and the other betting that exists in Nevada.
All right, under the law, where is it likely, do you think, that Massachusetts might regulate these operations? I mean, where are the most ripe areas for regulation?
With respect to the manner in which the gaming can take place, and I do see it at the end of the day as gaming as opposed to games of skill. And so what they will regulate is the payouts, the percentage that must be returned to the player, just as we see with respect to casino gambling and the like. And I think you'll also see the restrictions. If in fact they aren't smart enough to start to adopt a very serious level of policies and procedures in-house to try and protect and safeguard the players, what you'll see is that there will be restrictions on what the activities of those involved with FanDuel and DraftKings and the like, what their personnel can do. Because that's what really brought this problem up in the first place, is the concern about self-dealing and insider trading when some of the employees were making large amounts of money.
All right, so they've tried to say, all right, we're not going to let our people play. in order to avoid regulation in that area. But it does seem just obvious that, I mean, how could somebody at one company, when they know where the money is going, then go across the street and make a bet across the street?
Yeah, there has to be many more restrictions along those lines with respect to what personnel can do and what other activities they can engage in if you want to have the public have some sense of propriety about what their actions are. And I think if they don't do it on their own, and even if they do undertake serious restrictions on their own and serious procedures and policies that they put in place virtually immediately, you're still likely to see either the Gaming Commission, the Attorney General, or the state legislature take control of this area and put very firm policies in place.
It's interesting because who can bet gets a little squishy. For example, it's been brought up, let's say a player, we don't want players betting, right? But they have big posses, these guys, all right? Mm-hmm. So they have people that are with them, who drive their cars, who are at their homes, and who knows whether they would get access to, either through talking or documents or a computer, a game plan for that week. And a team says, okay, every time we're inside the 7-yard line, we're going to do this play, or we're going to give it to this guy. So they know, oh boy, if we're in the red zone, this guy's going to get the ball. So there's insider information right there when you choose your players.
Well,
and that kind of thing. I mean, again, it gets a little muddy and squishy.
There will be. There'll also be, from the standpoint of just the business aspect, the people in-house at these companies will know who's a better risk and who's a better gamble with respect to how much more of a return I can get on my investment. But who's more of an inside player than one of the investors in this business, which is Bob Kraft? He owns a team. He should have some greater knowledge than the rest of us with respect to what's likely to be taking place both in the industry and on the football field.
All right, taxes now. You mentioned that earlier. Should and do you think that the state will get taxes, and in what form? I mean, could there be a sales tax? Could there be other taxes? How's the state going to get their piece of the action?
Well, there'll already be a tax of some sort that's paid. If the companies make money, they're going to pay a corporate tax with respect to their earnings. If the players make income with respect to what they make in engaging in the fantasy drafts and the like and the playing, they would pay or should pay taxes on their income. The question is, just like in gambling with respect to the casinos and horse racing, whether there'll be a 10%, 20, even a 25% rake off the top of the gross revenue, which will mean that the state will be partners now in this process because they will tax the gross revenue that the companies make, which also means then that the players, the people who are engaging in this gambling or game of skill, depending on what you want to call it, they will make 10 to 25% less because there'll be less money available to pay out.
All right, who should regulate it? Will it be the Gaming Commission? Right now the lottery is under the state treasurer. Who should regulate it in Massachusetts? An interesting question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I really don't know who has the greater skill and ability to engage in this. We have seen other lottery commissions in other states regulate and engage in the oversight of it. That probably makes some sense because they have already passed a lot of security inspections and the like. They have some understanding of how these games work. But it really is a different means of gambling, and so you're going to have to require and bring in personnel with far different skill sets than may presently exist either at the Lottery Commission or at the Gaming Commission.
It'll be interesting to see with the Gaming Commission whether this will be something that they say we should regulate after they look into the question of how they should be regulated and by who.
With this type of revenue that's being generated, everyone's going to want to be able to have a piece of the regulation that is likely to be coming.
All right. This past week, DraftKings, one of the very popular sites, who has an investor named Bob Kraft, owner of the New England Patriots, they hired Martha Coakley, the former Massachusetts Attorney General and former prosecutor, ran for Senate and governor. What's your sense of that? Good move by them? Good look for DraftKings, and how about for Martha Coakley, too?
Good look for DraftKings, right out of the standard playbook. Big company in big trouble, hire a well-connected, influential politician. Not such a good look for the former protector of the public interest in Massachusetts, Martha Coakley.
But she's got to make a living.
But that's what lawyers do. We represent clients. We advocate on their behalf. I would expect that this is only the first of multiple moves that these companies will make. I would also expect very shortly that they will announce that someone is director of security and oversight in the area, such as along the lines of a Bill Bratton, someone with that type of stature and security who can give comfort to people that there are measures in place that are protecting people. I also would expect if you were thinking about what they should do, they will probably likely also hire some influential people in Washington in order to guide some of that activity there. People who, like Martha Coakley, will be well received, have a proper stature, and when they speak for the industry, people will listen.
So there's money ahead for the lawyers and the lobbyists.
As always.
That's right. Michael Coyne, NECN legal analyst and dean of the Massachusetts School of Law. Thanks for being here, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.
Still to come on This Week in Business, someone is house hunting in Boston. A look at why that could be very important for one big company. But first, the future of the department store. Macy's top man in New England joins us to talk trends, millennials, and holiday shopping.